Yeah, I'm on. Okay, got it turned on. Everything's live. Live, yay. All right, I'm glad you guys made it. I didn't expect a lot of people since we have several gone for our family camp going on right now. So John and Heather and Tana are all gone. All right. Oh, we did have a huge crowd in Houston, though. We had a lot of people gone in Houston, yet we had one family that hadn't been there, and they're not members, but they come every once in a while. Because they do VBS during Sunday school in Houston, so they got a family of 2 kids showed up. So we had a good crowd in Houston today. All right, we're on chapter 16, verse 10, I believe. Okay, Proverbs 16, verse 10. All right, as we mentioned at the very end of the class last week, this section here, there are verses 10, it might even be all the way through the end of the chapter. I can't remember exactly. I don't really think not all the way through the end, but particularly through the verse 15, at least through verse 15, 10 through 15, you'll see that there's some references to the king. Okay, and so again, if Solomon is writing to his son is the king apparent, then he's telling his son, this is how you rule as a king. But as he says some of these proverbs, though, this is also how people interact with their king. Okay, it's also important for that. Now, since none of us is a king, we also need to realize, though, that we all have positions of authority of some sense. Maybe not so much anymore if you're retired and your kids are grown and gone, but yeah, we have some sort of a responsibility for other people. And so we can look at it in that respect also, if you have those duties still. All right, so with that in mind, it starts with the lips of a king speak as an oracle, and his mouth should not betray justice. Okay, so now let's see. Oh, okay. I'm trying to read my notes that I put on here, and I can't read them very well because it's, okay. No, I wrote it in pencil, and okay. They were... Oh, okay, now I read it. Okay. All right. So the kings don't just sit there and rule. How they rule is very significant and important for the benefit of the nation. And so and one aspect of the ruling is their speech, how they speak, and not just how they speak, but the nature of what they speak. And so in this case, it says that they speak as an oracle. An oracle is a wise saying, all right? And so kings are, anyone who's in a position of authority needs to recognize that what you speak is important because you are God's representative in that position. And therefore, you need to choose your words wisely, not just because you're going to say bad words, but because you want to say words that are uplifting and encouraging and supportive and instructive to those that you're teaching, okay? And so it's that as God's representatives, those are the words you speak. But also you need to remember, has a note here, a reminder to rulers that they should not abuse the authority invested in them, but govern according to God's will and word. So as people in positions of leadership, regardless of what you do or what your position of leadership is, there is God's word for that. And in fact, in Luther's small catechism, it has the table of duties. I forgot all about that when I was going over this, but how parents should act, how fathers should act, how mothers should act, how rulers should act. It has had all of those listing of duties that we are responsible for. So it'd be worthwhile to go over that. And all they are is just scripture passages that Luther pointed out. What came to my mind as I was reviewing this is I don't know, since we don't have kings and nobles and all that in our nation, so I don't know how much you know or what you think about nations that do have truly have kings and dukes and princes, and that kind of stuff, what you think about them, if they're just privileged people or not. I read a while back a book on just the monarchs of England, okay? And I always just thought, they're filthy rich, they have everything. But actually, the monarchs, the prince or princesses, but primarily the prince who was the king in waiting, he had a hard life. And so did the princesses too. Do you know why? Because their parents, who are the king and queen, knew that they are going to be responsible to take over when they're gone. And so they weren't spoiled brats. Let's just like say the princes, for example. As they were growing up, do you know what they had to do in their life, what their life was like? They were, particularly since England was well known for its Navy, most of them had to enlist in the Navy. And they didn't enlist as an admiral because they didn't know how to do it. They enlisted at the bottom. And they were put through anything anyone else went through. They weren't given any special treatment at all. They had to live with, and why did they have to live with the common sailor? And then hopefully rise in the ranks, and many of them did rise in the ranks, become really respected leaders in the Navy. But why did they need to be down there with them? They know what they're like. They know that common, and if they're going to rule them eventually, they got to know who they're ruling and what their life is like. So they have to live it themselves. So if you experience it yourself, then you know how to govern those people. And so in a way, that's what Solomon's saying. Now, Solomon's sons didn't have to do that. But I thought that was really cool with at least in England, that's how it was. And then even in the women, the princesses, they didn't have to join the Navy, but they were given a strict regimen of education too. They had, the tutors and the nannies and the tutors and all that. They had to learn. So did the guys too. But so they didn't all join the Navy, but they went through. They had to learn. They had to really learn how to rule, and then also the proper etiquette on what it means to be a ruler and behave in that way. At least in England they did, because the king and queen understood the great responsibility that they were like the father or mother of the nation, and they had to parent the nation properly and not just abuse their position of authority. Now, some of them did, of course, but that was generally what was done. So in a way, you can see that with this. Now this is in his speech, but then the next verse also pertains to this in a way that doesn't really read initially that way. It says, honest scales and balances are from the Lord. All the weights in the bag are of his making. All right. Now, obviously on the surface, the proverb talks about basically the seventh commandment and about doing business and being an honest business dealer. You have honest scales, because in that day they didn't have just money. They weighed everything out. They balanced things out. And if you have a scale that wasn't balanced properly, the people you're doing business with didn't always know it, or didn't know it, and you hope they didn't know it, because they did, then you'd be in trouble. So as to favor you. And so that's what's so bad about this, is that the one who did know it was the one who had the dishonest scale, and God. No one else knew it unless you got caught. And so the guy who had the dishonest scale wants to do business that way. He would get by with it until God decided not anymore. But so in this case, it's referring in a positive sense that you do use honest scales and balances in your business. You are honest in the way you do business. All right, so on the surface it says that. But it's also in the context of talking about kings. Where also do you see scales used? Law. Yes, right. In law, the blind, blind justice is the woman, right, holding the scales. Okay, and so in this case, that's what it's also saying that kings and anyone in position of authority, in that sense of authority, are to govern fairly and righteously, okay, with scales of justice being perfectly balanced, not favored towards the poor, not favored towards the rich, but just absolutely perfect. because, that's the other thing. You don't want to just favor the poor. That's not right either. Justice doesn't do that. God's justice certainly won't do that either. And so in this case, it's saying that justice must be fair, always fair as you rule. All right? So that's that. So, and then anything we do, that's the same way too. All right, and we'll just keep going then. Kings detest wrongdoing, for a throne is established through righteousness. All right. I thought about this in the illustration this way. They often say this when a new person becomes president. Watch what he does in the first 100 days is what they say. Isn't that what they say? Or the first month? Or what? Isn't it something about the 100 days? Yeah, and because that will also set the tone or for how they're going to govern, whether you like it or not. They're intentionally setting the tone for what they're going to do in the first 100 days and see what they can get done. Right? And I would imagine that's also true if someone took over as a CEO of a corporation. When they step into their office now, they will probably have an agenda in their mind about what they're going to do. All right, and how they are going to lead the company. All right, so in this case, it's kind of talking about that. And when he says detest wrongdoing, for a throne is established through righteousness. So when a person enters into their business and starts over, you want to set the tone that. How are you going to establish your business? How are you going to establish yourself as the leader in that business? What are you going to do? That's what it's saying. Are you clearly setting in your mind an agenda that this is the way I do business? Or this is the way I lead or govern or whatever it's going to be. This is the way I do it. And of course, as Solomon is talking about it, that you would do that in righteousness. If you are going to do that which is right, if you're going to have fair, honest business dealing and concern for your employees or various other things, then that's the way God wants you to be, and that's the way God's going to bless. So that's how you do it. Okay, I know even teachers in classrooms, right? You set it out at the very beginning, right? These are the rules of the classroom, right? And you usually set them up stern at the start. You probably stay stern, but you set them up stern, and then you may get a little lax as time goes on, but you set them up that way, right? And that's so that everyone knows what to expect. So in a way, that's kind of what this is looking at. That how are you going to govern? You better not make it through wrongdoing. Okay, and then also what that also is going to mean, where it says kings detest wrongdoing, it means then that as I'm starting this business, I will not tolerate anyone who's working for me. Remember, this is supposedly what Biden said, right? If anyone is abusive to anyone else, they will be immediately removed from position. That didn't happen, okay? But like if abusive to a reporter or something like that, all right, okay. But that they set that policy. So it's like, I will not tolerate anybody working for me or with me that is going to be doing anything that is wrong, dishonest and unjust. Or anything like that. So that's what it gets when it says kings detest wrongdoing. You want to surround yourself with those who do what's right. So you set your policy, then you surround those who are endorsing the same policy, and that policy is a right policy. Okay? We'll just keep going. Kings take pleasure in honest lips, and they value a man who speaks the truth. So this goes right out of what we just said. That's the policy. So this is the other one is... that the kings, those working for them, need to be truthful. No shady deals, no talking behind the back or, behind closed doors doing stuff, but everything's out and open and honest in the way you work. And that's that's how government should work. That's how corporations should work. That's how families should work. Everything's out there and honest and open. And they value a man who speaks the truth. Okay, all right. So there's nothing else on that one. That's pretty obvious. A king's wrath is a messenger of death, but a wise man will appease it. All right. Actually, this will be fun to do a Hebrew word in this one. Okay. Now this one actually, in a way, is really referring to the subjects of the king, not the king himself. And it's like a king's wrath is a messenger of death, because in that day, death penalty would be it, and the king has the say on that. It's not like in a democracy like we have. The king would have the say. If you die, you die. So you want to make sure you do everything possible not to make the king mad. Okay? You do not want to make the king mad at you. All right? And so in a way that it's a reminder to those who are those high officials with the king, you better have honest lips, and you better do honest business deals, because if your king's an honest, righteous king, and you don't behave that way, because justice is even there. Even if you're a high noble, you will still die, okay, or at least be removed from office. So you better behave in a right way in connection to the king, because otherwise you will incur his wrath, and if you incur his wrath, that's the end of it. Okay, so you better behave properly if you're the official below him. Okay, but there's actually something that's cool about the second half of this verse. It says, "A wise man will appease it." Okay, the word for appease here is actually, does it say something different in a different translation other than the NIV? Does it say appease? Okay. And I mean, that's okay, translation, but I want to just show you that this word, show you some Hebrew again. I'll just show you the root of the word is kopfer, okay? Okay. This is kind of easy to do. You got to make sounds when you do this. Okay. 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 Kopfer. Okay. Yeah, I think that's... All right. This is actually the word for atonement or propitiation. The kopfer is the lid on the ark. It's the atonement seat. Okay. So when it says appease it, it's actually saying that it will you will provide atonement. So this is how God saves us. And so it says your words will be such that you will save yourself. Okay? Because your words will be such that you will not incur God's wrath, the king's wrath, but you will actually use your words to bring atonement or propitiation, is covering of wrongdoing or forgiveness. And that's actually the word. It won't mean much to you now. I just thought it's kind of cool how this word is actually the same word used for God's salvation for us and his atonement, his forgiveness towards us. Okay? So there's a new Hebrew word, kopfer. That's kopfer. All right. I know. He was DP, wasn't he? Kapfer. K-A-P-F-E-R. Yeah, he was a district president. Yeah. Yeah, Pastor Camprath in Rolla, when he was a pastor in Iowa, the Kapfer was not DP yet. He was or was he? He might have been a DP then at time. Yeah. Yeah, he was a DP. Uh-huh. Senior pastor at Memorial. Okay. Yeah, he was DP for a long time. He was a good district president too. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I wonder if his name has to do with that. It's a German name, really, but yeah. Anyway, that's kind of cool. Verse 15. When a king's face brightens, it means life. His favor is like a rain cloud in spring. All right, this is also kind of like verse 14. If you want to make the king happy, all right, so if you make the king happy, you get benefits and blessings. If you make the king mad, you're dead. It calls for a wise person not to try to finagle or twist the arm or manipulate the king, but it takes a wise person to use his wisdom in speaking properly to the king. Speak with humility, but also speak with wisdom and receive the king's favor. Yes. Yes. Exactly. It's the difference between Abigail and Nabal. Right. You know how to speak words of selflessness and humility and respect for the one in authority over you, which is Abigail, what she did. Because David is the king.
even though he's already been anointed king, but Saul's still ruling. But he actually is the king, and Abigail knows that. Whereas Nabal, he had nothing to do with him. Nabal was the fool, and he was abusive in his speech towards David and spoke down to him, and that just won't go well. You just don't do that to the king, let alone to whoever. David was his guardian at that time, and you just don't do that. That's biting the hand that feeds you there, and that doesn't work. So yeah, this calls for that. And so hopefully you don't understand this in the sense that you're trying to be one of those sweet talkers. That's not saying that. It's just saying that you use wisdom that God gives you, that you speak kind, positive words and words of insight into what's right and what's wrong, and that you do that because the king, when you do that for the king or those in authority, they recognize that. They recognize that you're helping them in their position as the leader, and they will return the favor to you, even though you're not really doing it for that benefit, but you're doing it for the good of all. And so that's what, in a broader sense, that's what it's talking about. And the king's face brightens when he has people that talk like that. Not just, again, and not just sweet talking them because they want to get his favor, but to know how to talk to him and help him in his position as a king. A good advisor, good cabinet members will do that, okay? And they know how to address the king. All right. Verse 16 is one of those that we kind of really... Hear a lot. How much better to get wisdom than gold, to choose understanding rather than silver. But if you want, now that's, we've heard that so many times, but now if you want to do this in the context of being a king, in connection with the king, this one, while it's similar to other Proverbs, in its context, has an additional thought pertaining to our relationship with the boss. Okay, if you just have money and position, but don't know how to use it wisely, you will still lose that because you're not the boss. You're not the king. Whereas if you know how to speak wisely and humbly, you actually are greater worth and value than if you had gold and silver. You can lose it all otherwise. So it's referring to that. So much of this is about how you interact with the king, and you're acting in a humble, peaceful, respectful, and wise way. All right, the next one. The highway of the upright avoids evil. He who guards his life, guards his way, guards his life. I don't have anything on that one. Here he has in the commentary, kings are not well disposed toward those who would threaten their reign with unrighteous behavior, and they wield the death penalty, which is what verse 14 says. So if you, do what's right in the eyes of the, now you keep thinking about this, you get this. This is Romans 13. Rulers hold no fear for those who do what's right. Do what's right, and you'll be fine. But if you disobey, the kings don't bear the sword in vain, is what Paul says. So even bad Caesars who are really corrupt and evil, self-exalting and all that, glorifying like Nero and all those, if you still knew how to speak wisely to that king, to the emperor or the Caesar, usually it went well with you. But if you kind of were disrespectful and abusive, they had no tolerance for you. And so in this case, that's what it's saying. Do what's right. And you will avoid the evil. And if you don't, it doesn't say that here, but if you walk in the ways of evil, the king's wrath will come down on you. So walk in the ways of righteousness. All right, here we go. Verse 18 is the one verse that we know, although now we realize that if it's in the context of being a connection with the king or a ruler or a boss or whatever, you can see it in a different light too. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Pride goeth before the fall, right? Now, let's see. I'm reading here. Why? Because I'm doing all the talking now, so I'm trying to figure out some way to get you to talk. So, why is this true? Pride goes before the fall, particularly if you're talking about with
Unless it's in June. I know. That's why. But it will still come at some point. It will still come. Pride month will be condemned by God himself, okay? It still will come, all right? We just don't know when it will come. Okay, so let's think about this. Spend a little more time on this proverb. Why will pride bring a fall? Okay, that's one reason. It renders you unable to learn from your mistakes. But you'll make a mistake and then you won't accept responsibility for it, right? That's true. That's true. Anything else? Yes, you rely on yourself rather than God. I think that's the key. That's what pride is. This is Satan's fall. He was proud, and then he tried to make Adam and Eve the same way, and self-centered. So you rely upon yourself, and we are by nature sinners and ignorant. We don't know all things, and whereas God does. And if you are proud, you will not accept any guidance from someone else, particularly God, or in this case, from God. All right. So pride will lead a person to fall. It's just going to happen. It may not happen in this life. It may happen at judgment, which is the worst thing, because then you go to hell. But if you fall before that time, you have a chance of coming back, because you need to be humbled, and we all need to be humbled before God, and because He will then lift us up again. Okay, so it also, in the context of with kings, and here he has a good comment, it warns those who deal with powerful people to avoid prideful self-aggrandizement, since those who are higher have the means to cause the downfall of the arrogant. So the person who presents himself as a very self-aggrandizing person, exalting him and putting himself on a pedestal, will likely, when he comes up with the proud king, will find that he doesn't have the power that the king has. The king will cause his fall. It's the parable, it was actually going to be a proverb at some point too, about that Jesus was witnessing when he was going to a dinner feast, and what were the people who thought of themselves as being the important people, what were they doing? Yes, jockeying for the best seats at the table, right? And what did Jesus say? Yes, sit at the lowest seat and let him call you. I mean, just a natural human way. Won't that be even cooler if they actually you put on this humility that you really don't think you have, you don't really have. And I'm not saying Jesus is saying play this, but that's how it works. You feign this humility. I'm really nobody, and then you get this big presentation by the host of the party. Oh no, you don't sit there. You get to come to the host, the table up front. Okay.
Right kind of people. I mean, I think that there are lots of people that are impulsive by what they do, and they don't do it for that reason.
Right. They shouldn't do it. Yeah.
So that they're not thinking they're important. There are a lot of people that are.
So they actually genuinely take the lower seat. Yes, yeah, and that's what. And honestly, I was saying, if you took it as a play on what Jesus is doing, now people do it that way. Properly done, we should always think of ourselves as nobodies, nothing on our own. Yes, right. So it's never about exalting yourself. It never is. Yeah, it was an object lesson, but
I don't think that he thought that he was.
No, well, right, exactly, not for the wrong motive at all. And Jesus says that when he is washing their feet, he says, "Why am I doing this?" He says, "You know how the Gentiles do it; those who are lords and masters lord it over, and you call me Lord and Master, but this is how it is in my kingdom." The exalted one humbles himself. So it's actually, you genuinely humble yourself, because he says, that's what I did. Of course, Paul talks about that in Philippians 2. Let's see. Though in flesh he was equal to God, he made himself, he did not consider robbery to be equal with God, but made himself a servant, and coming in the likeness of man and humbling himself even to the point of death on the cross. All right. So he said, that's what, Paul says that's what Jesus did, and that's what Jesus is saying. I'm the exalted King of Kings. And yet I don't do this as a show. I do this genuinely, that those who have power show their power by exhibiting humility. Because in a humble position, you're below the people so as to lift up the people and thus serve the people. You're not dragging the people along with you. You're serving the people, okay? And so genuinely, it should be done that way. You don't feign humility. Yeah, that's phony. Of course, God sees through that. And so in this case, so pride becomes for a fall, that illustration that Jesus gives is that we are to be the humble ones who we don't care where we sit. I mean, I don't care if you consider me number one, number two, it doesn't matter to me, is what Jesus is saying. Because I already know who I am. I am a child of God. You can't get better than that. And so it doesn't matter what position I have in any ranking of anybody. Pride's not a factor in this at all, because I already know where I stand. Okay.
And everybody forgets this, I think, and especially if you're on a roll and you have a lot of successes in a row. I think it's important to remember who allows you to have those successes.
Yeah. How are you able to succeed? It's not by your own abilities. Yeah.
Who is helping you in your mind, and who is helping you have good health to
right.
do what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So any of those who are have accomplished things should always properly recognize no one can accomplish anything apart from God's favor.
The medical profession in general has an advantage, because there are times when things go right, and you think you can walk on, and your clients think you can walk on water.
Yeah.
And the very next one you see, no matter what you do, nothing works.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
You get slapped back down.
Yeah. That's true. We do have those wake-up moments in our lives when you're really successful, you've done everything, and you accomplish things, and then suddenly something happens, and you don't even know why sometimes. You just can't control it, and you realize that you're not that great as you might have think you were. So pride is obviously the number one enemy that we have, and so you never have pride. Yeah.
I guess this translation is pride goes before destruction.
Yeah.
From the circumstantial human interaction, I can understand what destruction is. So you're in traffic, you went through a red light, and the judge says, "Why'd you do it?" And your pride says, "Well, it's a bad light," or those kind of excuses. I can understand that they should throw the book at you. That's the destruction in that circumstance. But from God's perspective in that line, what is destruction? Are we talking about hell? Are we talking about damnation? What's destruction? Is it because from our own sin, I understand. We all fall short. We ask for forgiveness. We have Christ to advocate for us. But if we're in those circumstances, well, that sin's not that bad. I don't really need forgiveness for that.
Right.
What's the destruction?
Yeah. Well, and see, that's what's the amazing part about studying Proverbs. They don't narrowly define things, so that you are allowed to look at it on various levels. And so you look at the surface level would be pride goes before destruction, like Haman and Esther, the story of Esther. He exalted himself. He thought he could be something. Or pride would be, in one sense. Another one would be all those people who are actually jealousy, but were jealous of Daniel. Okay, so they conspired to get Daniel thrown in the lion's den. And yet, when the king realized what happened, who ended up getting thrown in the lion's den? They did. Okay, and so their pride didn't get them anywhere. So on the surface level, it applies to just activities in life. But then on the broader level, the deeper level, then it does go to destruction, is eternal damnation. Right, and so a lot of these proverbs are like that. You can see it right here. It means this, and so it's kind of like Jesus saying, "You have heard that it was said, you shall not murder." Well, he says, okay, you got that. You got the crass definition of you shall not murder. But he says, but I say unto you, if you're angry with your brother, you committed murder. So he says, see, there's another level to this, okay? You know, he does that with adultery. He does this with taking oaths too. So he says, you've heard it said this way, but yeah, that's true, but that's not all that this means. So this means, yeah, you will be destroyed. You may lose your position. You may lose favor. You may lose everything in this world if you exalt yourself, and then the wrong person, you do it to the wrong person, and that person being your boss or ruler or something like that, and now suddenly puts you down, and you lost everything. That's one thing. But the other thing is, if you do this to God, you lose it all eternally. Right. So. Yeah, right. So that's again what's great about so many of these proverbs. You can listen, you can hear them in that sense. And so, and as I was reading, the commentary, and he reads others too, is like that seems to be the point of the proverbs. Solomon's intentionally not being very narrow. He's saying, so you can say, yeah, it applies to this, but it also applies to this. And one's not right and one's not wrong. I mean, they're both right, okay? And so one's just a deeper meaning.
It's like kind of like the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
If you violate any of the commandments, I mean, it's going to affect your life.
Yeah.
Negatively in some way.
Right.
Maybe relatively minor, maybe negative.
Right.
But in the end, the violation of any of the commandments is a violation of all of them.
Yeah. If you violate, yeah. Right.
The result is returned without Christ with eternal damnation.
Yeah.
Pride is a violation of the first.
Pride is violation of the first commandment, right?
Because you're putting yourself.
Right, and often, and it's kind of where I hear where you're going with this, but you may not be meaning it that way. When you have pride, so that you violate the first commandment, you have no qualms about violating any other commandment, because it's like, I made my own commandments. I don't need those commandments. I made up my own. And these are my laws. These are my commandments that I go by. And so you made up your own laws, and God says, no, that's not how it works. I'm still God, and I will still insist on my way. So you can make up all your rules to how you're going to govern your life and do things or run a business or be a king, but eventually you're going to answer to me. And when you do, it won't go well with you because you're proud. You have not humbled yourself before me. Right. So those are all good. So this verse, you can see why this verse is such a powerful verse, and that it's a common verse that I think even non-Christians know this verse. Pride goeth before the fall. Doesn't mean they do it, but you see that happening, and so often, don't you see that happening? So often you say that with, often with doctors with that. Well, I see it a lot with athletes. They're so proud of themselves because they did something, and then the next play or the next game, and they're just horrible. Because they can't play perfect and they can't play the awesome game every time. And then they just have a horrible game, and suddenly they look really stupid because they were just cocky and arrogant and all that before that. And it's like, well, now how come you're not pounding your chest and doing all this, like you were before? Now you just kind of want to slink away because you lost the game,
Winter Olympics when I can run. With snowboard, when she grabbed the snowboard at the end, she's winning the race.
Yeah.
She did a trick on the last play, or in the snowboard and fell.
Yeah, right. And we said that made me think, if you watch a lot of the track, not a lot of track, but when we watch track sometimes in the Olympics, like in the preliminary rounds, you just have to get in, place a certain in your heat. And so some of these guys are really good, and so they're flying through, they're easily going to make it, and then they just start letting up about 10 yards before the end, because then look at me, and they're always strutting to the crowd already, and then suddenly these people come flying right by them, and they didn't even make it, and it's like, and then they're humiliated because everyone saw that why they lost was because they were proud and they were cocky and they were exalting themselves before. It's like, just finish the race, and then don't be cocky either, but just finish the race, and they won't do it. Yeah. Oh, so on racehorses, that's why the blinders are there? They're called blinkers, not blinders?
They're blinders.
Okay. So they can't see.
So they have no reason to quit.
Oh, so they keep running. Yeah, yeah. And that's what runners need to have.
And it's kind of like people. If
Yeah.
you're going,
Right.
then you have no reason to quit.
And that's really true how you say that, because if you watch those athletic or the track races, you'll see they're looking around. And when they're running and they're looking to see where's somebody, can I let up now? It's like, no, don't let up, just keep going. And so that's the idea, because they're cocky. Their pride takes over, and then they fall.
And isn't that what Paul says when he says,
Press on to the end.
don't
Yes.
let up, but press on to the end.
Yes. Forgetting what's behind, press on toward the goal to win the prize.
So when you think I've always taken that as when you think you've got it made, you really don't.
Oh, and that's if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you do not fall. Right? No temptation. Yeah, that's 1 Corinthians 10.
If you give up, you quit watching yourself.
Right. You let down your guard.
Think you've got it made.
Yeah. That's so true. You let down your guard and you think you got it. Yeah, right. Or sometimes you'll see that. I remember how stupid these guys look in football when they're obviously going to get a touchdown. So they already start their celebration like 1 yard before the goal line, and they already let go of the ball, and then it's seen what happened, and they are so embarrassed, and it's like, good for you. You needed that embarrassment, that humiliation. Their coaches are yelling at them. Their other teammates are yelling at them because you had the touchdown. With students, how?
With students, a lot of times at midterms, that's one reason I never give an A at midterm.
Oh, you never give an A in midterm.
Because you want them just to think that they have to work just a hair harder.
Oh, okay. Make it.
I've seen it happen where you have a student who's really good up to the midterms, he gets a really good grade.
In midterm, yeah.
All of a sudden
He just thinks he can coast through, right? And then he does.
in the spring,
Yeah, especially in spring. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, those are good illustrations. Yeah, and all those apply to what this is talking about. Okay, we got 2 minutes. Let's go. Better to be lowly in spirit among the oppressed than to share plunder with the proud. All right, so this is humility again here. But here, if you're again talking about with kings who seek to rule well are going to not tolerate, share plunder with the proud. Kings who seek to rule well will not tolerate criminal activity or arrogance or anything that will look bad on the king himself. So we're talking about a king who wants to rule well. So like we said before, you better be in line with the king, or else you will incur his wrath. All right, so that's what it says, than to share plunder with the proud. Better to be lowly in the spirit and among the oppressed. So the better choice is to remain humble. And even if while you are humble, you remain among those who are the oppressed, because you're the one being stepped on by all those who are trying to climb the ladder to get to the attention of the king. So you get oppressed by that way. It's still better to be that way than to try to push yourself and shove yourself into the presence of the king and find that the way you've done it was not what the king approved of. And then you get in trouble. Whereas to be just genuinely humble and working sincerely, doing your job, and then get noticed is better. So that's kind of how this verse works. Okay. Whoever gives heed to instruction prospers, and blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. All right, we got that before. Just again, listen to what the Lord says, follow his ways, and okay. What? Why? He who instead of whoever?
no, they don't stop and ask for directions.
Oh, I get. He who looks for directions, not instructions, but directions.
Our instructions.
Our instructions. Oh. Well, no, that's me. I read the instructions. Oh, I do. I have no problem going to ask for directions because I don't want to be just driving around. Oh, I think no. I want to get there. So I will ask for directions. Maybe I'm weird, but yeah, I know you're just, it's not you female chauvinist. Okay. But I know that's true. I know it may be a more male or female thing, but I think it's really more your personality style. Okay, some people personality type is such that they won't try to attempt to do anything without the directions or instructions on how to. That's more me. I'm not trying to wing it because I have no confidence in myself. I think I'm going to ruin it.
We lived in Botswana. You try to give instructions to directions on how where
They wouldn't take directions in Botswana.
go in the right direction. And I'll go so far, and then I'll ask you.
Then okay.
Go so far, and I'll ask you.
Just keep asking. Okay. Sure. Well, the other thing is you got to be careful who you ask the directions from. If they say, oh, you go about, I don't know, 3 miles that way, and it may be 10 miles, or it may be, whatever. But they say, oh, I don't know about that. You'll see something, you turn here, and yeah, you also got to know who you're getting directions from, right?
Somebody gave me instructions, well, you go past the Newkirk place.
Yeah, I know. You go past this house, and
You know where that red bar is?
yeah, the red bar used to be. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. All right, so we'll quit with that one. That since we got that going here about being a shoot. Recalculating. All right, we'll start verse 21 next week, which is July 16th. Okay, yeah. Yeah, see, I just want to get there, so I will ask for directions. I have no problems asking for directions. Yeah. Keep going, yeah, right. Well, I'm even in the store. I mean, I'll just go straight up and say, "Where's this?" Because I don't want to go looking for it. Just tell me where it is. Go ask her. Ask her. She asked for directions. Yeah, so I think it's over here. No, actually, no, because that is our personal, and it's not a right or wrong. No, I know what you're saying, but I just want to say that it's not a right or wrong thing. There are certain, one personality is such that when it says some assembly acquired, that person will start with the first thing he'll do is take the directions out. And it's step one, step two. That's me. Tana, which is a different personalities type, is it's between judging and perceiving. The perceiving person, they look at the box, they look at the stuff, they look at the box, look at the stuff. Okay, I think this goes like this. I perceive it should go this way. Often you get it done faster that way. Reading directions take a long time. That's why I don't like putting things together because it takes a long time because I have to read the directions. If she can get it done that way, I'll let her do it that way because it's done. I don't have to deal with it. If I have to read the directions, but if it has to be done, I'm reading the directions. Even if it's a two-step thing, I'm reading the directions. Okay. All right, let's. Now we're way over, thanks to Bev. Okay, let's close with prayer. Most blessed Father, again, thank you for an opportunity to be in your house and to receive your guidance through your word. And so as we have reflected more upon the wise sayings that you've given us through Solomon, we pray that by your Spirit you truly will lead us, that we may do that which is pleasing in your sight, that we may be humble servants in your kingdom, that we may serve you faithfully in all that we do and say, that we may bring honor and glory to your name. Through Jesus, our blessed Savior, we ask this. Amen.